Right, so good evening and welcome to everyone to our panel on eco-responsibility and traceability in gem and jewelry industry. So with our guest tonight, we will be covering important topics. For instance, we will be talking and discussing why sustainability sourcing of raw material is the primary step for a jewelry brand towards becoming socially and environmentally responsible, and also what actions are taken in order to ensure that. Also, we will be discussing and understanding, why ethical production and supply chain transparency are critical and fundamental steps to achieve in order to ensure that the jewelry industry creates positive outcomes for the planet and for the people. And also, we really count on our audience to ask as many questions as you wish, because tonight we really have a great panelist with us, and I'm really honored to have you all with me tonight. Really thank you for joining. And let me first of all introduce each of you to our audience. Ahmed Drammeh from Nigeria, with 20 years experience being and working alongside artisanal miners. And recently a trader for gemstones, rough gemstones across the African continent and internationally. So we will hear more about artisan miners. Yani Melas, CEO at Gemexplorer, graduated an instructor at GA in the US, and as you like to quote yourself, a veteran gem explorer. So I'm sure you will be sharing with us many of the experiences that you had traveling around and discovering the mines, and at the same time, your work today as an artist and a creative person, but at the same time also an activist. Dr. Laurent Cartier, you are head of education at SSEF, and you are also lecturer of gemology at the University of Lausanne. And you're also an author of many books on the topic of responsible sourcing. Iris van der Veken, executive director at Responsible Jewelry Council, a track record as a leader with purpose, integrating businesses, social and environmental best practices in many countries around the world. And really, a person who is really supporting the changes that we all would like to see in our industry. And Tatjana Li from China, from Beijing, experienced multilingual entrepreneur and a very forward-thinking leader, with also a gemstone and jewelry background, and today a jewelry and gemstone contractor based in China. So please welcome all our guests tonight. And I really would like now to start our discussion and conversation. I'm so honored to have you all here, and I'd like to start with Ahmed. Also because Ahmed, we had the opportunity to talk a little bit together via messages, via phone. But I think in your job, in your activity with the artisanal miners and also being a trader, I think it's gonna be, first of all, very important for you to explain to our audience what it really means to be and work in an artisan mine. And at the same time, I really would like to ask you in which way nowadays the trading happens from Africa and internationally.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, here you are. We can also see you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Hi. I'm pleased to be speaking alongside everybody, respected guests. Okay, so artisanal mining is essentially a collaboration of people within community, and for the purpose of gem mining project. Okay, and this can be all people from different backgrounds, like farmers, metalsmiths, carpenters, and just generally able young men and women within these communities. So this is essentially what the artisanal miner looks like.
Thank you. Thank you. And then would you like maybe to explain a little bit more, when you mentioned that you are trading stones across the African continent and internationally, you just explain a little bit more in which way your job is done and what kind of activities this relates to.
Okay. I play a dual role of being a trader on one hand and also a miner on the other hand. On the trading side of things, generally I'm, working with this artisanal, and I'm trying to get gemstones from them, and we selling to other dealers, like in the major hubs, in close to all the gem producing areas, there are hubs, where people are trading, so from this hubs is also the first point of contact between artisanal and dealers. Okay, so
right.
Yeah, so we are trading from the mines and to the different hubs.
Understand. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And then, maybe later on, it would be interesting also for us to understand a little bit more, the sourcing, the traceability of these stones and the way this is, set up and developed further when it comes to the overall supply chain. So maybe this is another question that I will be asking you later on. And now I really would like also to leave the screen or the floor to Yianni. There is something that I've always kind of enjoyed very much while I was talking and discussing with you. And by the way, I saw today on your Instagram that you were posting some old pictures of you from Hanoi and your experience over there. So Yianni, you had really the opportunity to visit mines, to talk to people and really observe the whole process of stone extractions. Can you share with us some of these adventures, some of those, actions that you went through? And can you please tell us a little bit more about your activities today as a designer, as a person also who deals with stones, but at the same time really work hardly into this business and into this universe?
Thank you, Donatella, and it's an honor that you invited me, and also that I share this panel with all the distinguished guests, which are all friends. I want to give a special thanks to Ahmed, because this was his first talk ever, okay? And he did it really, really well. And this is exactly my point, is that a lot of these young men have never been exposed. I come from education. Ahmed has never done Zoom where he's spoken about his trade, and he's taken baby steps today. And there's a lot like him that we would like to support. And these are the people that I work with. And they're amazing souls and amazing human beings. So part of the answer is that I've been very blessed to meet people like him, and I have known his family, and his family has known mine, and they will know my kids and so forth. And that's part of the business of going to the mines, is meeting these wonderful people and building relationships that last 30 years that allows me to go into a new country or a new area. And I can call Ahmed up and say, Ahmed, I'm coming to Nigeria, and he will, not just only him, but every Mandingo, Wolof, or every person that is part of our tribe network that supports one another will come and support each other. So this is a community. And, you know, the whole gem exploration thing is actually almost like a beehive. I love that expression. I thought about it and I read an article a few days ago, because it was never known that beehives actually have guard bees on the outside that are actually built different than the rest of the bees. And their whole purpose is to guard, you know, this beautiful hive that is almost like a colony. In our industry, the honey is the gems, and we have to be a colony that works together. Ahmed does his job, and he risks his life to be, as he said, you know, these are hubs in the middle, but hubs not as if in like in New York, but hub in the middle of a jungle somewhere where there is hardly any communication or anything, and he has to endure staying there for a month to collect the gemstones. So the time is very limited, but what I want to leave you with is actually a message that our industry is an incredible, beautiful gathering of multicultural people from different religions, different you know, ethnicities, you know, different backgrounds. We have West Africans in Zambia, you know, Zambians going to Tanzania and everything. And we prove to the rest of the world that these communities with all these multifaceted religions and colors and everything else actually is this melange of amazing love. And so we protect one another. You know, we protect one another. When I go there, he protects me. When he comes, you know, like let's say to a panel like this, and he's asked questions that maybe it's difficult for him to answer, I'll help him out. We are a family. And so each one of us has a part in this whole minds to market. And this is a very important thing that people don't think about. You know, analogies, because my background is education. I was a teacher at GI, and sometimes it's important to use analogies. An analogy, you know, in this particular case, is the, you know, the farmers and the croissant bakers. You have people that don't want to, you know, if you take a farmer in Oklahoma or in Iran or some other place who's growing wheat, he doesn't care to make croissants. He doesn't want to have a bakery. He doesn't want to make fluffy cakes. You know, he doesn't want to decorate them. He doesn't want to do that. He just wants to grow the most wheat, and he wants to be on his tractor, wear his cap, you know, go hunting, do whatever he wants to do, have a good life. That's his lifestyle. This is what he loves. Guys like Ahmed, you know, he loves this trade. He's basically almost like the farmer. This is what he loves, you know, and he has the opportunity. You think he's very educated. He's shy, but he's very educated. And he loves to trade. He likes to go to the bush. He loves that lifestyle. I know Ahmed, and I know not the 1,000 Ahmeds who love that freedom of being under the stars, meeting all these people, traveling. It's a lifestyle. And so each one of us plays a very important role in our industry. Each one of us plays such an important role, because the guy at the farm can, you know, the guy at the mine, he cannot travel every day to go to the city to sell his goods. He cannot go to Bangkok. These are expensive fares, you know, and he finds maybe 3 stones, you know, 4 stones. Our industry is not like the diamond industry where you have a big hole in the ground. You know, these guys find 3 stones here, 5 stones there, 8 stones there, you know, and somebody has to collect them. And nobody thinks about the cost. Every time I travel, I know I have to put in something for the car breaking down, because anybody who's traveled in Africa, you go 16 hours in a car in Africa, the axle is going to break, the tire is going to get a flat, you know, the engine will, you know, fall apart on you because the car goes through hell. So the guy at the mine, he likes digging because he's looking for his dream. As Laurent said, you know, they're chasing their dream. You know, they're looking for that one big stone, and he doesn't want to leave that place and leave it to somebody else to dig up his dream. So we are all a part of this chain. And I don't want to sit in the bush like, you know, Ahmed sits for maybe 2 months in Nigeria. I want to go to Nigeria, maybe spend a week there, you know, maybe a month, okay? But I won't go back there for another year, okay? I'll go to Tanzania or Zambia because I seek the excitement. So I have friends all over and they're specialists in their area, and we work with them. And this is such an incredible community. And then we give our stones to people in Bangkok who cut them. They distribute them to other brokers who have 10 offices around the world, in Japan, in Tokyo. I mean, I can't afford rent in 6 different parts of the world. And these people, you know, memo, they do all these different things. You know, they do the treatments. This is a very complex industry. People think that the people at the mines, you know, can actually do the treatment on the rubies. They can't. You know, they can maybe if somebody teaches them, but that will take decades, okay? And that's something that we're working on in the future. But for right now, there is a chain of people that everyone benefits, and it's a beautiful family.
Thank you, Yianni. And, you know, I always love to hear the passion and the way, you know, you express everything that you've been living through, you know, during all your 13 plus years of traveling. And I think that also your commitment towards what you call a family is extremely important. And I think it's very also important for all of us tonight to hear all that. And again, you know, as you said, having Ahmed with us tonight, it's also, you know, a privilege because, you know, very often people like him, they don't have the opportunity to talk, to express. So I think it's very important for all of us tonight to hear, you know, his words and, you know, discuss and you know, exchange all together on this topic. So now I also would like to ask a question to Laurent. Being head of education at SSEF, Laurent, you really have the role to train, to educate people on the understanding of stones and gems, about the provenance, and also you are the author of many publications really on the topic of responsible sourcing. So I'd like to know more in which way SSF via you and your colleagues is really bringing across the education on stones, and in which way you are actually also developing, you know, this important topic about sourcing, traceability, and provenance of stones.
Sure, thank you for the question, and thank you for inviting me to this panel discussion. So I think that fundamentally education is really a key fundamental part of this conversation of sustainability. And it goes much further, it goes back decades. People who were buying gemstones, they had to know, was it treated or not? Was it synthetic or not? So the more information, the more education that is around, the more people can make informed choices. And that also applies to anything that, you know, concerns responsible sourcing or sustainability. Is the more people know what they are buying, the more they can make educated, ethical choices. And the same thing goes for consumers, actually. We talk a lot about sustainability and education within our trade, but I think there's also a big need to educate consumers about issues such as blood diamonds or treatments or all the other kind of range of issues that exist. And our trade is a very complex one. And I think that there has for a long time been some hesitancy with, you know, saying, okay, it's not perfect. Sustainability is a journey. There will be multiple roads to get there for different, you know, sorts of stakeholders and actors. But the key part of going on a journey is to actually have a map. And the only way to have a map is the better informed you are about your supply chain, about what you're buying, where you're getting it from. And gemological education and what we do at SSEF is part of that. Essentially is, you know, learning, what am I actually buying? What am I selling? Am I disclosing it correctly? And I think that really kind of fits into this larger conversation. And so there's a very heavy focus on sustainability and responsible sourcing for mining and artisanal miners, and it's an important part of the conversation. But I would say we need to go further. There are cutters, there are people who are, you know, making jewelry. There are old jewelry traditions in France, Italy, but also in West Africa and other countries that are being lost, that are going lost. I think part of sustainability is also about kind of maintaining that heritage. And I think that education is really a part of that kind of large picture. And so that's where I see things going over the next few years. And yeah, we've taught a lot of courses. And just to build on what Yianni said in the sense of community, I think that we have a very Western perspective on sustainability, but also education. I think some of the most interesting moments that I've had in my career was being in French Polynesia and Sierra Leone and Burma, talking to miners and cutters and actually realizing that I don't have all that much to teach them. It's really going both ways. And so this sense of community and, being a little bit more modest in this whole sustainable conversation about saying that it's an exchange, that it's one industry, it's complex, it's sometimes fragmented, but we all need to move forward together, and that works through collaboration and also education and information.
Thank you, Laurent. And it's what you are sharing with us. It's very important and also very deep somehow, because you were talking about education on consumer, because I think this is also a very important topic in the overall understanding of eco-responsibility and traceability, and also having a map, trying to understand what it means from a supply chain point of view, and the overall meaning of tradition and heritage, which is also extremely important. So I believe that as a professor, you really have to bring all that along, and also trying to also understand, the people that you have in front of you, and always find the right way to develop the knowledge. And also, as you were mentioning, also knowing from the other people that you are meeting. So also you were talking about having a map, and this gives me also the opportunity to ask a question to Iris, talking about roadmaps and trying to understand a little bit what is next. You are, a strong advocate of sustainability since more than 20 years. And today, as the Executive Director of Responsible Jewellery Council, you are really actively involved in the activation of the 17 SDGs from the United Nations. If I'm not mistaken, today you also had a panel on artisanal small-scale mining, right, with the Alliance for Responsible Mining. So please let us know, what is next? What is the roadmap that Responsible Jewellery Council has implemented for the next years to go?
Well, first of all, thank you, Donatella. And just allow me for 2 minutes for the people joining this panel today, just also tell, what is the Responsible Jewellery Council? I think it's always important to have a context, because we talk about sustainability now, and today it's almost, it's a hype, even though I always say we shouldn't have a word for sustainability, because it's really about human dignity. But when we were founded in 2005, the Responsible Jewellery Council, we were really founded with what we were talking about now, about that sense of community, the importance of having a united front, but also the importance to have a solution in sustainability from mine to market. And that's how the RJC was founded, really. You had a mining house like De Beers, you had retailers like Signet and Tiffany, you had manufacturers there around the table, you had a banking institution. And so they said, we need to set a standard for the industry, which was 2005. So this is 15 years ago, 16 years ago. So here we are, 2021. The standard evolved because of regulatory evolution, I would say regulatory pressure, also different stakeholders' expectations. And today we have this robust, what we call the code of practices. Companies become member of the RJC. They commit to implement this code, which consists of human rights, climate, product integrity, what Laurent was talking about, anti-money laundering, all the big topics of sustainability. And the companies will get independently audited by third-party audit. So that's in a nutshell. But I want to touch base, Donatella, on what Laurent said and what Yani said and what Ahmed said, because first of all, no one can do this alone. When we make jewelry, or when jewelry is created, you have different parts of the supply chain. And if you really want to talk truly about a sustainable supply chain, it means that all the actors within that supply chain need to be connected and do good. And that's complex. I mean, I think, Yani and Ahmed will probably be able to tell the real stories out there. I've been in 14 countries on the ground, but I was never, for example, in the jungle. I was everywhere, in factories, in subcontracting, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And sometimes I didn't see such pretty things. And that's why it's so important that management systems come into place and that companies take very serious commitments and see it as a journey of continuous improvement. And so that I also agree, Laurent, that takes a lot of time, and it also takes a lot of education, because often, you know, there are many thousands of family businesses in the supply chain that actually they want to do good because their purpose is really to bring that family business to the next generation. But, you know, to understand about policies, to understand about knowing your supply chain, about due diligence, I think that's where we as an industry, and we definitely see that as RJC, we believe we have an important role of educating and giving companies tools to really implement sustainability. And then to go back to your question of the roadmap, I think the good news is there were lots of talks, you know, there are lots of definitions on sustainability. And again, my own definition is human dignity for all. But if the good news is that the 17 Sustainable Development Goals is this framework that has been agreed by 193 countries that actually say this is the common agenda of the world, to leave no one behind. And then what can you do as an organization to commit to that? And what we did as RJC is we discussed with many different stakeholders. We looked at how can the global jewelry and watch industry contribute to 2030? What are some of the most important SDGs? And you know, you have 5 gender, you have 8 decent labor, 12 responsible production and consumption, 13 climate, and 17 partnerships. And partnerships, I believe, like us sitting here to get together today, Donatella, and thank you for bringing us together, that's the way it will change, by people connecting, by organizations connecting to drive that change. So I'm happy to go talk about that further later in the panel, but this is a roadmap. We've been developing metrics for that roadmap. We want companies to report on progress. All the information you can find on our website. We've also developed a task force with big brands, small enterprises to test the waters, to do piloting. And we're happy to share all that information. Laurent, for example, as a learning curve, how can we take that knowledge to cascade that as a waterfall in the whole industry?
Thank you, Iris. And this is very important also what you are sharing with us. It's really, you know, the topic of education is really the topic of being all together, you know, embracing the same cause. And each of us, we have our role and we need really to commit all together to make it happen. And I think this is also one of the reasons why I really felt it was important to have this panel tonight all together. And this is why I'm so happy to have all of you with different facets of the industry, but just the fact of being all together and discuss the topic, it's a very important step ahead. So I'd like also to give the voice now to Tatjana, because it's also interesting when it comes to Tatjana. I mean, she's German, but she's been living most of her life in China. She's been working as a graduated gemologist in the jewelry industry. So I think it's going to be important also to know from her side the way things are developing in Asia and how the whole topic of eco-responsibility, traceability, supply chain transparencies is developed over there and her experience being in China.
Yes, hi Donatella. Thanks for bringing this together and for having me. You ask a very extensive question, and yes, let me try to answer it alongside the supply chain stages. So first, let's look at the different mining regions in Asia. There's very informal ASM mining prominent in Cambodia and Laos on a small scale production, and on a bigger production level in Afghanistan and Burma, which is both very war-torn at the moment. So there we don't need to start with sustainability. Then partly more formalized is the artisanal mining on the small scale mining in countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And there already were built up some trade organizations and other supports. So I think there from the process, the industry is ready that we can now start or build on this with sustainability campaigns. Large-scale mining in Asia is actually only seen here in China, I would say. Some of the mines here are state-owned, but it's also possible to have as a private company to get a license. And I would like to mention one company, maybe somebody of you has come across their booth at the Gem Geneva show. It's called Fully Gemstones, and they have a peridot project in the northern of China. It's at the very beginning, but it's a positive example. It's a special example because it's a mining company that is forced to operate here in China, in a country, certainly still a development country to some aspects, but it's already a legal, completely legal and strict environmental setting that they have to operate in. And the management is actually very aware of all kinds of sustainability issues from the beginning on, and also have already committed that they will make their whole production traceability. So other good examples here in Asia are definitely the pearl farming companies. When you think of Japan or the South Sea, okay, that's Asia Pacific, they are all now working actively on improving and also proving their sustainability processes. And again, also here in China, China is the center for cultured pearl production, right? So I also got approached from Chinese companies here, and we are trying to build up something together, some trace and tracking for their products, and also some proof for their efforts towards sustainability. Unfortunately, at the next stage of the supply chain, when it comes to the gemstone dealers, I mean, I have been selling stones here in China mainly for more than 10 years, and never ever one of the dealers asked me for the ethical or not ethical background of the stone. Only when you talk to, or when you try to sell to, then mostly stock listed companies in Hong Kong, this might happen. And also for the wider Asian market, I think the awareness is definitely there meanwhile, but people are, in my opinion, too lazy and will only move and change things really when they get the pressures from the customer side. So this brings me to the next stage, to the jewelry manufacturing stage. Again, there's also, I think, the fact that the large brands now have their responsible sourcing strategy in place. They will confront them with all these questions. And so they have to, the manufacturers also have to adapt with their sourcing. I mean, this can be seen in a similar extent in India, Thailand, or China, or all these manufacturing hubs. But however, I mean, all this and this trade and exchange and communication in the community is gradually bringing a mind shift also here in Asia. And we can see factories and dealers now applying, for example, with Iris Institution for the RGC certification.
Right.
And last but not least, a few thoughts on the retail stage. There we see some big companies in Asia, only mostly from Hong Kong again, like Chow Tai Fook and TSL. They already go so far that they, partly since 2016, I think, will publish sustainability reports next to their auditing reports, kind of equal stage already. And this is a positive sign. And another positive sign is also like many small brands are now at least trying to offer eco-friendly or ethical jewelry. And the end consumers are very aware of all these things, and especially the younger generations, you can, for the more developed countries in Asia, really put on par with the consumers in Europe or America or Australia. And the pity is only that I feel here, especially the preparedness of the retailers and their staff at the counters is still very insufficient. And there needs to be done much more with education, of course, also internally by the companies. But on the other hand side, in China, the advantage is that we have a much higher level of general digitalization,
right,
in whole Asia. So both in regards to the digital marketing strategies of the companies and also for the digital safeness of the customers, of the consumers, of the end consumer. And I think online communication and education in the web has definitely the potential to fill this gap and to help out with informing the consumers and answering their questions. So I think platform businesses or e-commerce and even social commerce is really a great opening position to promote transparency and responsibility.
Thank you, Tatjana. I mean, you gave us a very interesting overview of what is happening in Asia, and I think it's very interesting that you were also able to detect a little bit different approaches that we have, you know, from the sourcing into the B2C, into the consumer, and towards the end of our panel, there will also be the opportunity for you also to share with us the new project that you are working on, which is also going to be very interesting to share with the people listening to us tonight. So thank you for this overview about your market. And now I'd like to go back to Ahmed. I mean, you were explaining to us the trading work. I think it would be maybe interesting once again to put a little bit more of light on everything that happens for the artisanal miners. And I think it would be interesting also to know in which way, of course, you are supported and what is happening in terms of, you know, bringing the effort together, and in which way you see the development of the artisanal miners in your country.
Okay, in terms of support, what we'd like is to see that our communities continue to thrive, you know. What we do is we mine stones and we try to get this, spread the wealth within our communities, and we're trying to, you know, improve our trade. So this is what we would like to continue. So if it becomes too complex than that, then this is it's like something that goes in a different direction.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
can I add something to that? Can I add to something to that? Because I want to explain what he just said. You know, I'm not jumping into Ahmed. I'm just explaining what Ahmed just said. Ahmed has to collect from 1,000 different people, and the big mine, which is mining from one pit, collects from one pit. It's very easy for them to say where they got their stones and everything else. It is not easy for somebody like Ahmed to actually create paperwork for every single gemstone he collects from 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, Yianni. It's very good what you said to support. And then this also leads me to my question to you, because earlier on, you know, I've been introducing you for everything you've been doing about traveling the world, traveling into the mines, understanding, you know, this extraction part, and founding Gemexplorer also. And now I also would like to unveil a little bit the facets about you being an activist, and maybe share with the audience what you actually do as an activist, and what are the, you know, the plans and the way you help the communities, and the way you bring across your message.
Well, we spoke earlier about the beehive and the guard that guards the beehive, and the Ahmeds of the world and all the community. They protect me, I protect them. We have a community of protection. So this activism is about protection. It is not about aggression. It is not about having wars. It is not about being going against anybody. It's actually in protecting the little guys, and especially the indigenous who don't have a voice in particular places like Mozambique, but not just only Mozambique, and Brazil, and different parts of the world. I think when Iris said something, he says we should not leave anybody behind. Well, actually, the reality is we have left everybody behind in Africa, because today, if you try to find somebody who cuts diamonds properly in Africa after decades and decades of us taking diamonds out of Africa, billions and billions of dollars, there still isn't a decent factory in Africa that is actually cutting diamonds excellent. And this is just a shame. And this goes back again to what all of us are saying is education. So how do we create education? And, part of being an activist is not talking about rhinoceros and saving rhinoceros. We have so many people to save in human lives in Africa that are suffering, and big families and children dying. I like to leave the animals for other people to save. I have 3 dogs, 3 horses, 3 cats. I'm totally an animal person. But, we have a community of gemstone people that for me are my priority. And if I'm making a living from those people that are mining the gemstones, it's also my responsibility to protect them. It's part of the job. It's part of being part of the beehive that we have to protect them. It is not something that I'm doing just because I think it's like, a nice thing to do. No, it's not about being nice. It's about part of our ethos, part about who we should be. If we benefit, we also have to give back. And the sad thing, everybody talks about traceability, like we were just talking about traceability in China with Tatjana and everything else. But the reality is all these brands, nobody puts traceability. You look at the Tiffany page, nobody even mentions where those rubies come from. They don't even mention that it comes from Mozambique or from Burma, anything. There's no information. If you look at all the big brands, they mention nothing. Why? Because they're trying to hide. If something happens in Mozambique, they want to stay safe. They want to say, so by not putting anything. So everybody talks about traceability. Everybody talks about education. Everybody talks about responsible sourcing and everything else. But at the end of the day, okay, they don't even have the guts to put the source on their pages of where their gemstones come from. So sometimes I find myself talking here to everybody, and I have to be the devil's advocate and say, you know what? I don't know what you guys are talking about, but it doesn't make sense to me, because the reality is, and I'm not saying everything that's being spoken about because nothing's being practiced. If Tiffany, who is supposed to be the godfather of responsible sourcing for gemstones, can't even put the source of their gemstones on their website, I mean, what are we talking about traceability here? So when it comes to activism, I decided, because our industry runs 80% from people like Ahmed. There's thousands of people like Ahmed. And the last thing they're interested in, even though they're extremely religious people and good people, their culture is so much intertwined, almost like the Greek people, that if I become successful, I got to support my sisters, my cousins, my aunts, everybody else. And in their community, it's even worse. If Ahmed makes, money, his mother's going to call him and he's going to bring up some relative that he's got to go send money to. These are righteous people. And in 30 years that I've been doing business with them, not once have I ever met somebody that ever did me wrong or cheated me or sold me something that wasn't right from that community that I'm talking about, because everybody knows each other. You do something wrong, it's on you. All at once, I start reading all these reports on, all this stuff that's going on. And I'm saying, I'm speaking to friends, a friend of mine who's traveled all over the world on artisanal mining. And I've asked him, have you met any of these bad people? Just spoke to a friend of mine in Israel. Have you met any bad people? I mean, there's people that will try and cheat you sometimes on things, but all these criminal things that we hear about in the colorstone industry, we have a wonderful family. We have a wonderful, wonderful family. So activism for me is about protecting that family. And in order to do that, you need to create, the platform to do that. So you know what? When I was the ICA organizer, because I've done a lot of these congresses and organized them, and I'm the master of ceremony and all these things, Mines to Market in India, several events that I've organized all over the world. Whenever I try to bring in artisanal miners, actually bigger groups, to talk and discuss things with the brands, with everything, nobody wanted to bring those people in, okay? So this is a nice surprise, I've created our own organization. which is in the making right now, which is artisanalminers.org, okay? And artisanalminers.org is all about giving back, okay? The things that we keep talking about, but not giving back to rhinos and elephants and dolphins and everything else, okay? But giving back to the people that are actually helping us, the children of Ahmed and his nieces and everybody else who wants to learn how to design jewelry. His sister, for example, teach her how to make jewelry, you know, so that Ahmed can actually be a stone person that can actually supply her and create a symbiotic relationship where, you know, the father and the daughter or the sister work together. So we haven't created that education. So when you go back to Africa, you have an incredible system of rough. They have the gold. They have, but they don't have proper faceting, and they should not be doing the marketing, because people in Africa don't have the resources to open up 6 offices all over the world to sell to everybody. But what we can do is we can create through artisanalminers.org, the education platform, to allow these communities to actually help each other versus exporting their gemstones and their rough. The rough is sourced in Zambia. It is cut in Zambia. The jewelry is designed in Zambia. The gold is sourced in Zambia, and the jewelry is exported from Zambia to the US, to China, to different parts of the world. And China Africa now becomes not just only a hub for rough, but a hub for manufacturing gemstones and education. We haven't done that. We keep talking about it, but we haven't done that. A lot of people are doing that, let's say on a small level, but considering that we've been at this for centuries, and we don't have decent diamond cutters that are indigenous, I think that's a very, very sad story.
Thank you, Yianni, and giving back. I think it's so important. And again, this overall idea of sharing, understanding, and really getting an understanding of what is happening and really trying to help. So,
yeah, I wanted to just interrupt because this understanding that we're talking about has a reasoning behind it. This initiative has the reasoning. First of all, it's an org. Do not trust people that come from .coms, okay? If it's not an org, okay, like RJC, like CIBJO, like a lot of, organizations out there that are, that orgs, you have to, somehow trust the orgs. But what I wanted to say is my initiative was to create something that takes 0.5% from the sales that we do in the artisanal miners and have an event every 2 years. Let me tell you something, I'm the best organizer. All the Africans in one place, all the brands, we're gonna have the best parties, the best events, the best educational things, down to earth, not some stuffy ICA Congress that's gonna be with all the dealers wanting to benefit off of each other, but something that's really down to earth, that's really about education. And that 0.5% will go back to education at the sources. So we buy a gemstone from Zambia, a rough gemstone, everything else, 0.5% of the sale from the designer is gonna go back to Zambia to education. Not to education that has to do with reading and writing, but education that has to do with gemology, cutting gemstones, designing, everything else. And we're going to give back with that 0.5%. What's 0.5%? 0.5% is $5 on $1,000. It's nothing. And everybody will be able to be proud to say that. And the last thing I want to say, and I'm not speaking against, we have arguments all the time with Tati about this blockchain thing. But what has blockchain done with regards to diamonds and all these things that they're able to prove where it came from? The Kimberley process. The Kimberley process did nothing for education and diamond cutting. Nothing. Okay, it just proves where it comes from. But what does it give back? It gives nothing back. Okay, this will give back.
We have a few questions for that, Yianni. So,
yes.
So maybe when I read loud the questions.
Sure.
This would be for you to answer, because we have a specific question on that. So hold on a second to then give the answer to the lady who shared with us the question. And then also I can see in the comments from Melissa, she's very interested in your initiative. And she says that she spoke to a woman in Zambia who is looking for ways to mentor. So you see, tonight it's also a night to create connection, to talk about the issues, and really also, you know, enlighten minds, and then do things together and bring the community ahead. So I just would like now to go back to Laurent, because there is something that intrigued me very much, you know, when I was reading your bio, and it was mainly you know, what you created around pearl farming and traceability issues for pearl. Because very often, you know, when we talk about sustainability, traceability, the focus is very much on rubies, diamonds, precious and semi-precious stones, and somehow we don't hear much about pearls. So Laurent, can you share with us a little bit more about your publication and what you've created as an association?
Sure, thank you for the question. So yeah, it was research that started over 10 years ago, and it was on, so what does sustainable development actually mean for a pearl farm? There's a lot of pearl farms in Asia Pacific, as Tatjana mentioned. They're on the front lines of climate change. They're working with living organisms, and obviously it's very different to mining. And the question was, could they actually contribute to a better environment? And I think the reason why pearls are actually interesting is that we seem to be going round and round in circles in this conversation, but also many other conversations about ethics, responsible sourcing, sustainability. I saw there was a question asking, what does sustainability, how does that even tie in with gemstones? Because mining is finite. And the way I see it, and that's just my interpretation, is that we need to start measuring impact. And this, I'll come back to it about pearls, but there's a pearl farming friend of mine a few years ago, he said for him, sustainability was like you're taking a cold beer out of the fridge, where you need to put a new beer back in. And I think when you look at what's happening with COP26 in the world, we've probably taken more than 2 beers or 3 beers out, and we need to start putting something back in. So it's not just about maintaining the status quo, but it's always, if you're, again, in my interpretation, if you're going to use the word sustainability, you should be able to back it up with scientific metrics. You should be able to measure the impact that you're having. We have both negative impacts, positive impacts, that is absolutely fine, but there needs to be an impact that you can measure. And otherwise that term is a little bit diluted in my sense. And what's interesting with pearls and pearl farming is that you can actually measure a lot of these things. You can measure what is the impact of the pearl farm on fish populations, on coral reefs, on the water quality, on the number of people that are employed. So this was quite an interesting case study, and it's still kind of ongoing research on how can we actually put metrics in place to show how it can not only have a neutral or negative impact, but actually a positive impact. And that's something that quite a few pearl farmers are working on. And given the, you know, all the challenges that there are with oceans and climate, it's quite an interesting thing to look at. And to bring it back to gemstones, because there was this interesting question, what I would say is that gemstones are infinitely recycled. There's so many old gemstones in the market. It's also an opportunity to use the sale of these old gemstones in a way. It could be to organizations such as what Yianni is doing, or education. They go round and round. We can, anytime they're sold, you know, part of the proceeds could go for positive impact work. It could go towards education. And I think that the industry needs to look at a little bit more at that. And yeah, that's it for pearls. I mean, I can just speak kind of from the front lines from pearl farmers. They're having big issues with ocean acidification. They're having big issues with water temperatures being warmer. There are also mining communities that will be affected by these issues, perhaps not as much on a daily basis. But a lot of pearl farmers are acutely aware of that. And so, you know, they're trying to adapt, they're trying to do things differently, and they just have to do that to stay in business. So I think that actually sustainability, this idea of having a positive impact, it should not necessarily be something that you claim or you do. It should just be a normal part of being a human being and of doing business. Maybe I'm a bit of a dreamer and an idealist, but that's the way I see it.
Donatella, allow me to step in here, please, because sure. I fully support that vision. I think that's also what we at RJC are trying to do, you know, for me also a company, one thing is certification, which is important because it helps companies in their journey to embed management systems. And you need strong management systems if you want to go to the step to measure. Because if you don't have management systems, how do you know actually what you're doing? And step by step, you can know more about your supply chain by doing due diligence. But I fully agree with Laurent, and that's why we have set up that roadmap and we have our SDG task force within our governance structure, because we want to show, right? And show not only, you're right, Laurent, not only a fact about a positive impact, but also, negative impact and evolving from, not just from doing no harm, but really doing good. And that's a learning curve. Again, that's education.
Sure.
Because what we see is that we did a survey, to give you an idea, and that the results will come out in December. We did a survey around ESG, right? Environmental, social, and governance frameworks, and how that contributes to equity, and then how companies can measure. And we saw lots of companies said, look, it's too early. I don't understand. I need to get more education. And I think that's where we need to step in to see that it is right. It's your license to operate. There's no other way of doing business. That's actually the way we have to do business. If we want to leave behind a planet, I agree that that we can all, and the next generations can live on.
Absolutely. And thank you, Iris. I mean, it's so important, to elaborate on what Laurent just mentioned. And I think it's really, a task that we have for the next generation, and also for the communities. And this really brings me also to the question that I wanted to share with you. I mean, bringing it also a little bit more into the B2C world. I know there was a signing of the Watch and Jewellery Initiatives 2030, signed, if I'm not mistaken, by Cartier and by Kering. So here again, we have a commitment from the large luxury conglomerates and groups. So would you like to explain a little bit more about that, and what kind of commitment and what kind of roadmap is in front of us when it comes to B2C?
Well, first of all, I think, my view is, and I'd love to hear other people's views on that, is that, brands play a very important role in driving positive change and driving that sustainability agenda. On its own, they're very aspirational, and when you buy a brand, you expect, that promise to deliver. So when the Kering Group and Cartier came to the RJC a few months ago, to partner up, it was for us a natural choice. We would do that, by the way, I always say to anyone who comes with a great suggestion to help move the agenda for the whole industry. I think what's so interesting about this initiative is that it really wants to focus more on more scientific-based targets, Laurent, to give you an idea. It wants to work much stronger on impact measurement, and really in 3 big chapters. And one is climate resilience. 2 is preserving resources for nature and communities. And the last one is fostering inclusiveness across value chains. And what this initiative also wants to do is really also help educate the industry, bring everyone along the journey, but at the same time, let leaders step up, right, and make those commitments so that we can accelerate some of these targets, because we know we are behind. And that's why they're very ambitious targets. I don't want to go into the detail, but you can find more information on the website, and soon we'll be communicating more about it. But it's quite an ambitious program, not easy to commit to, but we're confident, that brands will step up, and that will help, again, have a cascade effect, because brands will work with their wider community in supplier programs. And we've seen that programs work if you contribute to bigger supplier programs. And the Watch and Jewellery Initiative 2030 is one. But if I think about originally 5, 6 or almost 10 years ago, I'm getting older, Signet, that started that program with their suppliers. I think 2 days ago, Bulgari talked about their certification. They have a very intensive program with suppliers. They have brought a lot of suppliers into the program of understanding, what are best practices, how do you start your journey, etc. But I agree with Yani and Tatjana and Ahmed that there's a lot more work to do, and no one can do it on its own. And I don't think we should reinvent the wheel. So I think whatever we learn, if Yani, knows in certain regions has best practices, if Ahmed has, you know, good stories or bad stories, we should take that advice and get from learnings on the ground and do something with it. I don't think it's time to just sleep. We need to act.
Thank you. Thank you, Iris. We need to act. That's very true, very important. So my question now to Tatjana, talking action. Tatjana is developing a very interesting project related to blockchain. And again, when it comes to blockchain, sometimes, you know, it's not easy to have objective information, neutral information. So maybe Tatjana, you want to briefly share with us Noble Facet project and the way you are implementing blockchain into our gem and jewelry industry.
Yeah, as you said, it's really a lot of mystery, talking and thinking around blockchain still in the room. So let me first elaborate a little bit on this concept itself. Blockchain is more than cryptocurrency. That is probably the first thing that pops up with many people, Bitcoin and so on. It can actually get applied to many enterprise use cases. And I see this development absolutely coming, and it's going set to revolutionize, to disrupt many areas, not only of our industry, but of the whole work environment and our whole lives in the coming years. And the jewelry industry cannot close its eyes towards this development. So let me explain in like plain words what is blockchain. Simply put, blockchain is a database in the form of a distributed ledger, a shared record, so to say. And it just uses the cryptography to secure any kind of information that you put in onto this chain. It's actually written down in blocks written down on this ledger and added on each other, linked with each other, and therefore the name blockchain. But always think better about it as a database, which cannot be changed by one single person, so which is pretty secure. In the jewelry industry, so far, this concept gets actually only applied with the use case of traceability or provenance. So here it means like the blockchain technology allows the data behind a specific diamond or gemstone or the whole piece of jewelry to be recorded securely, like a digital twin of the real asset as it moves along the value chain, along the supply chain. However, there are like, allow me one excursus, there are two kinds of blockchains around. Some are private and some are public set up. And it's actually only the public blockchain network that is fully immutable. That means like, if there's one block written down on the chain, there's no way, absolutely no way, that somebody can delete it or change it. While in a private blockchain, and this is actually the case, that all the blockchains we see in our industry so far are private blockchains, enterprise blockchains. That's the same. Theoretically, a single organization has the authority, especially the issuer of this blockchain, to rewrite a block. I don't say anybody's doing this, but it's theoretically, technically possible. So immutability is a critical point where these private and public blockchains differ. And of course, we at Noble Facets, therefore, are striving for the perfect solution in my eyes. So we built up a public blockchain solution. At the moment, it's focusing on trace and tracking. At the moment, we have MVP, a minimum viable product already live. We built our own token. It's basically working on Ethereum. And we are working on some pilot projects with some customers here. But yeah, well, we are also talking to investors. So Donatella, please forgive me and understand that I can't disclose much more in this regard.
Absolutely.
Actually, also the first part of the project that will go public or get launched is another part of the project, because the project has many elements that we want to bring together. The first part will be a marketplace a B2B and a B2C. I think we are able to do this simultaneously when we launch it. So this will be a very innovative and multi-sided platform where we actually want to mobilize the whole ecosystem that we were talking about here. So we can improve the customer experience also in regards to sustainability. Because I think if somebody is doing, some companies, a miner, whoever in the supply chain, is spending so much effort to work on sustainability, he should also be able to prove that he is doing this. And then only then, I'm going with Laurent here, only then it's qualified saying, for me, qualified to say we are ethical and whatever. There must be some substance behind these words.
Right.
But then if they do it, they also should have the possibility to differentiate themselves towards the market by showcasing the good that they are doing.
Okay, understood.
And this is where we really have some special features in the platform to give people this opportunity. And we try to keep it technically extremely easy so that basically everybody can do it. And also on very low costs for the entrance. So yeah, because we want to, I believe in market, in the power of a market-driven approach. So I think it's very critical to give everybody in this industry an equal access to the market.
Thank you, Tatjana.
And this starts from the small miners. And also I'm really thinking, and I had a lot of discussions with Yianni, how we can build in his giving back approach. Ideally also blockchain proven where the money goes.
Absolutely, and it's very important that, as you said, you are also able to explain to our audience what blockchain really means, and also in which way sometimes information can also be, modified. So, finger crossed for your project, and it seems like something very interesting and very breakthrough in the whole concept of blockchain, and we are looking forward to hearing more about the development of it and the overall activation of the project. So I think we've covered most of the topics that I wanted to share with our audience tonight. I see we have a few questions, so maybe I read them loud and then I ask each of you who would like to answer. We have a first question from May. I understand the reasoning behind committing to ethics in supply chain, human dignity, etc., taking on SDGs, also regarding climate in production process. I am having a harder time rhythming concept of sustainability with mining, even if held by highest standards as the resource is finite. So using newly mined stones, how can this ever be sustainable? So I don't know who would like to answer this first question.
Yeah, Donatella, I'm happy to step in, and I would like Laurent to support me in that. I think first of all, we could have a separate panel on that, right? But I always like to give the example. Let's take the example of Botswana, which is really a country of nation building, where you have communities built, education built, health infrastructure, and so many other places. I mean, I saw Ali post Sri Lanka. I've been in Thailand. I've seen it all over the world, how indeed activities, mining activities can really build lives of people. But I do understand also, what we talked about with Laurent is to say, okay, if there's negative impact, that has to be translated in positive impact, and that has to be measured. And I think the good news is, I think that Olivia just shared some of the work of De Beers, but if you look at the work of De Beers or Alrosa or other mining houses, the tremendous efforts that they have brought back to the table in not just bringing back positive, but really going from, potential negative impact to positive impact. And that's very measurable, and they show that progress. So I always think, you know, when you look at sustainability, you need to see that you touch lives, that you touch communities positively, and that you contribute to development. And that's actually, if mining is managed well, that's what mining does. Yeah, I'm happy to have a side conversation with this. What was the name? I'm sorry, I'm looking for the name.
What I see here, it's May. Yeah.
Okay, May. Yeah.
May, absolutely.
That's a good question, May, but we would need to have a whole separate conversation. Laurent, I don't know if you want to step in.
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, we have been mining as humans since the dawn of time, since the beginning of time. Mining is not sustainable. It never will be. The question is, or the big question is, what do we do with the value that comes out of the mined goods? Is it just extracted and that's it? Or are we willing to actually create value in the communities and environments where it was extracted, traded, manufactured, processed, and sold? And that's what it comes down to, is that you have mining communities, for example, in Thailand or in Colombia or in other places. There's no more mining going on there, but they have actually shifted from being miners to, let's take Thailand as an example, to being places where people cut and trade and create jewelry. And so they've upgraded their industry. So I think that's a pretty good example of how sustainability can operate. You can actually create long-term value from those stones that were a long time ago extracted. And that's what we should be aiming for.
Absolutely.
I'll add my point to that, Donatella.
Sure, sure. You don't want to answer to the second question, but add your point. Go ahead.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I mean, everybody that thinks about mines, they think of this big hole in South Africa, you know, the Kimberley, which goes down God knows how long. But, you know, it's not like that in the real world. 85% of the mines out there are not like these huge pits. There's these small little tourmaline mines that go on for maybe 6 months and then they disappear. And, you know, I was blessed to go to Lake Manyara, one of my favorite spots where the old Greeks used to mine the emeralds. And they used to take lots of emeralds from there. And they had, you know, yeah, they had a big camp there with actually Greek fig trees and everything else there. And the wives would bring in the trees so they could create a community and swimming pools and everything else. Well, guess what? I went there, you know, 20 years later, and that place is like in the movies, you know, like there's, it's like Indiana Jones. The trees have grown into the walls and the trees have grown through the swimming pool. You can't even see that there's houses there because everything's grown on there. And nature is really beautiful. And I think, you know, in terms of gemstone mining, it is not like steel or copper where they destroy the entire surfaces. It's just basically people digging pits and so forth. It's large-scale mining that actually, in my opinion, could sometimes create a lot of damages. When you got people with shovels and picks digging holes in different areas, it's not that, you know, it's not that, let's say, environmentally. And in a lot of cases, like in Zimbabwe, in one of the mines where they dug a mine, the vegetation started growing afterwards. It became really beautiful, and the cows started drinking water because now they had a man-made lake there during the droughts. So I'd like to leave a positive thing. And the last thing I'd like to say on that is that a lot of the areas' worlds are very arid. So they cannot grow crops and cannot grow anything. So if they are able to dig up something from Morocco, find some asteroids or God knows what else, some amethyst and so forth, which are in destitute areas, which are quite arid. You know, you got to allow these people a chance to be able to make a living, and they find a lot of gemstones in those arid areas. So you know what? They dig with their little picks and everything else, and you know what? After the rainy season, you can't even see what happened. All those holes are all filled up. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. What was the place you mentioned, Yani? I didn't get the name. Lake Manyara. Lake Manyara. It was a mine that was done by George and Yasun Papas back in the 60s, 70s, and it was very historical. You go there, it's like a movie scene. Right, right. And I have another question from Catherine. If some luxury brands do not mention the origin, could it be because they actually do not know for sure where it comes from? Oh, no, no chance. Absolutely not. They know exactly where it comes from. They know exactly where it comes from. They know, their teams know who they're buying. They know everything. This is just basically politics where they want to protect their image. And that's the sad part about it. Here we are talking about Actually, I love Tati's idea of blockchain because I don't believe in blockchain because I believe that we're focusing too much on traceability versus education. I don't believe in all these things because it draws so much energy to do all this paperwork else that we should be actually giving back to the communities, giving back to the youth. So that's my thing. You know what? You know, you buy gemstones, you trade from the artisanals. We have basically a group of people that are honest. We try to keep them honest, meaning in our group, it's all reputation. So I'd rather go with reputation and education versus traceability. Because I think traceability has proven nothing for us. I think, yes, we can prove it, but in a positive way, what I like to say is that it also proves that the companies that are using these blood rubies are going to be accountable for their crimes that were done. So you know what? I'm all for it. Let them do all the blockchain that they want so people can actually prove that the gemstones that they bought actually were part of this human crime.
Donatella, I just wanted to step in here on traceability because, you know, sometimes people say, well, then if there's traceability, we will know, you know, if a company is what good or bad, whatever. It's not that, it needs to be nuanced. I don't know, you know, nuanced in French. It needs almost a separate discussion on, you know, what does traceability mean? And also, you know, what does responsibility mean and accountability means? Because, you know, if you really say a company is doing, let's say, a good job in sustainability or in responsibility, you can't just disconnect certain elements. You've got to look at different practices, you know, from indeed your due diligence, your human rights, your health and safety, your product integrity, your climate action plan. So it's complex because it's holistic. Because you can't say, okay, on one hand, I'm doing some philanthropy here, and at the other hand, I'm closing my eyes and I don't know what I know about, for example, potential human rights issues in my supply chain. So again, I think we need to be very careful when we talk about, you know, one is a more sustainable solution than the other. I do want to come back a bit, and Yani, forgive me, but I do want to protect, you know, many of our RJC members that are brands. I think that brands are putting a lot of efforts in due diligence and in their supply chains. But, and we talked about it today, I think that it will be important more and more that we collaborate even more across the value chains and the supply chains to have better understanding exactly of some of these parts of the sources. And we know, for example, on colored gemstones that 85% is artisanal. So that on its own is a bit more challenging to manage. But I see a lot of good efforts, and I also see a lot of acceleration. So, and I think that's also where RJC steps in, that we want to work together and also understand if there are issues, you know, how we can work together with NGOs, with activists like Yani, with experts like Laurent, with people like you, Ahmed, on the ground, with Tatjana, with, you know, technology solutions. How can we together just find, you know, good ways to be able to show progress?
I'd like to answer that, Iris, and I'll be kind, because I love you to death, and I've calmed down a lot since listening to you, because you're always very positive, and I like your approach. But what I do want to say in a very kind way as well is that, you know, these brands know very well that the big mining companies have politicians that are, you know, that are involved in the partnerships and everything else. And that, in my Greek language at least, is called kleptocracy. So that's a very known fact. And yet they still choose to do business with these companies. And so, you know, until, you know, the big brands prove to me, in terms of, you know, at least my opinion, that they consider political corruption as a big part of what they consider sustainable, then for me, it's just basically a nice story. So the other thing I wanted to say, just to add to that, is that in regards to traceability and, you know, blockchain and everything else, it also segregates our trade from the people. We have billions of dollars worth of rubies and sapphires, which are, you know, that have been mined from 100 years ago. And the minute that a trader in New York who bought something from a grandmother who just passed away or something like that, if he's not able to, you know, to sell that ruby to the brands because they will only buy from the big mining companies, I think that's not right. this whole thing is segregating us when we should actually be working all together and finding ways to give back to the communities. We're taking away way too much focus and not putting enough focus on the education side. That's at least my point of view.
Thank you, Yianni. And yes, I think we only have 5 more minutes. Maybe time for one last question. There was a question related to blockchain, and one question specific to Ahmed. How could Ahmed use blockchain as he sources from 100% of suppliers, a few small stones at a time? Or maybe Ahmed, you want to quickly answer. Tatjana, there was also a question about getting more information about noble facets from some of the people asking questions. So who would like to answer? Yeah.
Yeah, we will gradually post more information on our project. You can follow us on all social media, for example, at noblefacets.com later on, and at Noble Facets in the social media. But back to the problem people think miners like Ahmed might have. It's actually a misconception. Blockchain technology doesn't need to be expensive. I mean, broken down to a certain stone. Of course, the upfront investment is high, but broken down to the processing and transaction of one gemstone, let's say, on the blockchain, that is really low cost. A few, even a percentage of a cent can be done. And also, secondly, the misconception is it's not overcomplicated. Software can break it down to the user that it looks on the surface very simple. So basically, when somebody is at a mine and is at a level to be able to use an iPhone and has not necessarily on the spot, but at least when he comes home, some connection to the internet. Okay. Then it's already possible to participate for him.
Okay.
And actually the technology can do more because those people are often like unbanked people. And if we create more and go further, maybe we can also involve financial, blockchain has the possibility to bring them, connect them to the financial system even.
Can I ask Tati a question?
Can we just say bye to Iris? She has to
go.
Bye,
Iris.
Thank you, Iris.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Iris.
See you next time.
Yes, I think we need to have another conversation.
I fully agree. Absolutely.
We've opened up many.
It was too short.
Questions. Thank you, Iris. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I have a question for Tati. We're going to have 500 different blockchains, each one of them developed by their own self-interest. So the mining company is going to take their ex-employees and put them to create their own blockchain, and then another mining company from China is going to create their own blockchain, and so forth and so forth and so forth and so forth. And there's going to be 500 blockchain companies. How are we going to segregate now? Because this is not like the RJC or CIBJO, where we have these two mother houses, which basically, command over our industry and ethics. Here, you're going to have all these different companies creating, this blockchain thing, and everybody's going to have to choose. And you think the consumer is going to really know the difference between what is ethical blockchain and what is a blockchain which is having personal interests? So I'm asking a question to Tati on that, because I trust your blockchain the most. I am very outspoken, but if I was to join blockchain, it'd be yours, okay? But because you have no personal interest. But I'm just saying, for the consumers out there in Omaha who say they have a blockchain which is belonging to some company and God knows where, how can you segregate all these blockchains from being honest and dishonest?
Okay, I take your credit for one aspect that I want to mention also in this context is I really stepped out of trading. I'm in Jewellery now. I needed it to do it to get some money for building up my system. But I'm stepping out of this and want to be completely neutral, just as a facilitator, as a service company for the industry with my platform. Intuitively, you touched this a topic with interoperability between blockchains, which is really still the biggest challenge in this field. but it's gradually also getting solved. So for example, when you think about I have the platform, imagine it like a marketplace in a traditional sense, like Amazon or so, but you can also show your blockchain data in this. And we are working on this. It's a headache still, but we will make it able that also other blockchains will be able to upload their data there. And it will be presented on the surface in a very structured and therefore very comparative, easy to compare structure or surface outlay. So same goes for if it will be very easy to, like with one view, to compare is somebody RGC certified, or what is he doing, or even if this stone has just no record at all. As you say, that's another huge topic. We can only scratch it at the surface. You know, there's such a huge stock in the market. We can never get any tracing for it. We can, people who own the stone now can never prove about the history of the stone, or
Tatjana,
was that okay or not, but we still have to, we cannot lock these people out and this stock out.
Let me ask you a question, because you're from IDAR, okay? This is 90% of the stock in IDAR is from 30 years ago that these guys bought,
exactly
okay?
what I mean. So it cannot be like this stock is no more sellable,
80% of the stock that is in Jaipur, okay, is from God knows, however. They have stock that they've kept from the 60s, okay? They have Sandawana emeralds from the 60s, okay? You know, and this is very complex. Let me tell you my opinion. My opinion is I put my hands down on anybody who wishes to challenge me. Create all your blockchains and everything else, showing where your gemstones come, and come to me as an artist with my jewelry. I'm going to graduate every year 4 people from Brazil, from Africa, from Afghanistan. I'm going to put them through gemology school. That's my blockchain, okay? Giving back through education. People want to ask me where it's come from. It's going to have to be with reputation, not where it comes from. You know, I got the stone from this person. You want to ask me, I'm happy to tell you who I got it from. It's not that I want to hide anything, but I just want to focus everything that I have on reputation and education versus, blockchain and paperwork and everything else with a system that is going to be very difficult. With you, I would join anytime. I would be happy to join because I know that all my information would remain confidential and everything else. But I'm not going to give my information to somebody that's going to know where I got my gemstones and everything else too, that has personal interests. I mean, where we got our gemstones and everything else is also very confidential. And I think that the brands also needs to step up and tell us who they're getting their who they're selling their gemstones to, because I know a lot of people that are very corrupt with black money that come into a place with cash and buy with a suitcase of money. And this is also not correct. So if everyone's going to step up with this traceability, then the brands also have to step up.
Thank you, Yianni. And I just would like to finish our panel with a couple of questions, which I think are very nice. One question is from Eva, who is probably starting her jewelry business, and she would like to be involved in responsible jewelry. So she's also asking what should be the next step for her and where she can buy gems. And also there is another question from Andrea saying whether there would be a possibility to collaborate with community like the Ahmed's community, the artisanal miners, and give directly back from profits, or is this logistically impossible? So maybe I'd like to kind of end up our discussion with those 2 questions, which to me are very also nice for the future ahead. So what kind of advices and suggestions you would like to give to those 2 young designers or owner of young companies? Ahmed, what would be your advice?
Did we lose Ahmed?
I think you're mute.
Ahmed, we can't hear you.
I was pretty much carried away, so maybe Yani can respond to that.
I can actually, and the answer is very simple. There's two big trading centers. One of them is Bangkok, and the other one is Jaipur. If you go to Bangkok, Ahmed can tell you there's, I don't know, close to 200 Mandingos and Wolofs and everything else. They have their own little village in Chanthaburi. You go there and you think you're in Africa. They even have all the restaurants there. It's all African food, everything else. And they supply most of the Chanthaburi market. And so what I love about, Ahmed's system is they come into a big city with thousands of cutters, and they sell their rough. And guess what? It's the perfect way to sell, because they go from one person to the other person to the other person until they know who's going to give them the best price. And so I know that when I buy rough in Bangkok, sometimes I know that I'm probably the highest bidder, because sometimes I've bought rough there that's been sitting there for 3 months and nobody bought it, and perhaps nobody saw the beauty in it, and I bought it, and nobody can come to me and say that I got it for free or anything, because I know that the rough was sitting in the market, and nobody was buying it. And a lot of times it's also being an artist and being able to see which gemstones are going to sell. And a lot of times the people who are manufacturers and designers don't always have the artistic eye to know which colors are going to be favorable, like the gray spinel. Nobody ever thought the gray spinel would be great. So stuff that used to sell for almost like garbage in the sense of the market, now all at once has incredible values. Stuff that used to sell for $50 a carat, $30 a carat, now people are asking $250, $300. So the beauty of Bangkok is you have Sri Lankans there, you have Afghanis, you have Africans, you have Americans, you have French, you have everybody there, you have Russians. And it's an incredible community where everybody mingles together. The African community mingles together. You go down the street on Ceylon, you see every race, everybody, and everybody knows each other. And once you're there, it's very easy to buy, especially at the JTC building. They've got so many people there. But on the other hand, Jaipur is an incredible market. They have, I would say, a lot of times more of the incredible pieces, meaning in terms of emeralds, they have a tremendous emerald collections and so forth. Bangkok is more for everything. They have tourmalines now, they have everything. So I think, Jaipur and Bangkok are two places that a designer can go to and buy, whether they want to buy rough and have it cut there, or they want to, buy cut stones, or even to have them cast. Everything is everything's available and is available for casting manufacturing setting in Jaipur and in Bangkok. So I highly recommend people going there.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.